So see, watch this. It pops on as happening on our Zoom picture prior to it coming on here, and it will start doing audio. So I always tell you when, so that we don't have double audio. It's kind of a weird thing. See, now I can hit pause so that we don't have two audios going. And let's see. Okay. Thank you, Angela. We are officially ready to go.
All right. Hello. Good evening, night, everybody. My name is Angelo. I'm the chair of the Human Rights Commission, and welcome to the commission. We'll start with introductions today. As always, we'll do this popcorn style. I am Angelo Orlando. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm from Ward 2. I'll pass it to, why am I blanking on your name? Oh, Kathy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Ostran-Ponchen. I live in South Salem. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I will pass it to Kamadi.
My name is Kamadi Jackson. I am in Ward 5, and I will pass it to, sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, my name is Marley Baker. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. I will pass it to Oscar. Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Debbie Aguilar. I am a lieutenant with the Salem Police Department, and I am the liaison between the Salem Police Department and the Human Rights Commission. And I guess we might as well just continue with Gretchen.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name is Gretchen Bennett, and I am I use she, her pronouns, and I'm staff to the commission. And let's see, Jameson, why don't we go with you?
Hello, my name is Jameson. My last name is Gian. I use he, him pronouns.
Thank you. And Krista.
Hi, my name is Krista. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from Ward 4. And I don't know who next. Kathy. All right, I'm sorry, Kelsey. The interpreter said it wrong.
Hello, my name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns. I am a member of the commission and I live in Ward 4. And I'm going to pass it to Laura.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Having some technical difficulties. I'm Laura Fouts. I use she, her pronouns. I reside in Ward 3 and I'm on the commission. And I will pass it to Lisa.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Novak. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Ward 3, South Salem. I currently work as a grant writer for the local YMCA. Please visit us if you haven't already. We love to show off our building and just trying to be useful here. So thank you for the invitation. And I will pass to Zeke.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Zeke, they, them. Yeah, I don't remember what word I live in. I apologize.
No worries, no need. We're glad you're here, Zeke. And Linnell, do you want to say hi?
Who?
Linnell.
Hi, my name is Linnell and I'm with Safe Sleep United Women's Shelter. And I sometimes attend these meetings when I can, just because I feel like what you do is so valuable and I'm so grateful for all your work.
All right, and here's Angelo speaking. And just to remind everybody, please say your name before you speak so the interpreter can know who's speaking. So we can move on to our public comment. I know we have a couple of guests with us tonight. Does anybody have any public comment for the commission?
Maybe I do.
What do you think about getting out some photographs?
That's wonderful. Okay. Sorry, I'm working at the same time. I know that I'm still so grateful for the work that you all did on Chapter 97 and adding housing status as a protected class. I was trying to attend some of the presentations that you guys did about what that looks like, and We've just had staff and guests sick so often that I wasn't able to do that. But I would be very interested in if there's future ones, knowing so that I can kind of attend and just learn how it's being shared in the community. I've already heard positive responses, but if there's more outreach to share about that, I would love to attend. And I think we have better coverage now where I might be able to do that. But either way, I'm so grateful for all of that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Now, any other public comment? Gretchen, do we have any written public comments?
None received. This is Gretchen. No other public comment received.
Okay, thank you. Consent calendar, we can't really approve minutes or agenda because we do not have quorum tonight. So we will do that next month in January. Moving on to our action and our discussion items. Chapter 97 housing status discussion. Gretchen.
Thank you. This is Gretchen. And as you know, as Linnell just spoke about, this body recommended to City Council adding housing status as one of the identities in the city's human rights code, where we shouldn't have discrimination based on a person's housing status, and that was adopted. We've been enjoying conversations with community members exploring what does that look like? What does that mean? What if I apply for a job? What if I'm trying to get housing? What if I'm downtown and people talk with me and seem to have concern that I'm unsheltered? So we've been exploring those conversations. I was delighted to be contacted by the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, who shares a common mission with us in addressing discrimination, who wanted to come and explore a bit of a just sort of a think tank or a discussion about what do we think that means and involves. So we have a bit of time on the agenda just for that purpose, for us to kind of share our thoughts about the types of concerns or complaints that we're hearing or we think we're going to get, and kind of discuss a bit of a screen in or screen out, at least in this generic space, without having any particular one. I've not received yet, although it's gone into effect, I haven't yet received any complaints or concerns or reports. That none have come my way yet. So I don't have a tangible one to bring to you, but I've got lots of examples of past conversations, and I know you all do too. I thought before we get started, if that's all right, I would ask Marley with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon just to give you a little bit of background on who is the council, in case all of you aren't familiar, and then we can jump into open discussion if that sounds okay.
Absolutely. All right, this is Marley speaking. I'm with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. I am the Portland Metro and City of Salem Education Outreach Specialist. And a little bit about our organization. We are a statewide civil rights organization that covers 9 different regions. We have 2 primary teams. We have our education and outreach team, which I'm a part of. That means we're going out into the community. We're learning what does discrimination look like in these communities. We're connecting with advocates and tenants and even landlords to educate individuals about what does discrimination look like at both the application process, the tenancy, and the move out processes. We also have an enforcement team which does investigations of housing discrimination. They also look into disparate impact cases, and those are cases where a certain protected class is experiencing discrimination at higher rates than other protected classes due to a seemingly neutral policy. So we look into those cases where groups are being discriminated in that way. Trying to think what else. We do trainings in the community, going into organizations to talk about fair housing. And I was super interested at the last UGM emergency housing meeting to hear about housing status being added as a protected class within the city of Salem. When it comes to what we can do as an organization, we primarily work with cases of discrimination related to federally protected classes. Those protected classes include race, color, national origin, religion, disability, familial status, and sex, which includes victims of domestic violence, sexual orientation, and gender identity. When it comes to, and then we also have the additional protected classes of organ that we are able to. There's also the protected classes within the state of Oregon, which include marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity. And then when it comes to jurisdictional, that's where we pass the baton off to the city to deal with those cases of discrimination. So housing status would be a protected class specifically within the city of Salem. We wouldn't handle those enforcement cases, but we would pass them off to the Human Rights Commission in the city of Salem to do those investigations. Even though we don't do enforcement around that, I am curious to learn about the specific ways in which housing status could be that, let me rephrase. I'm curious to learn about specific examples of discrimination about housing status, because as we're going out into communities and as I'm connecting with advocates and caseworkers and talking to them, I hear all the time, well, I have a client who just got discriminated against or was denied because they're unhoused. And so we hear these stories all the time, but it's really nice to have concrete examples where we can refer people to and be like, if your client experiences this, if this is a practice, if this is said to them, they could have a claim to contact the HRC. So that's why I'm here today. Any questions about that?
So what is, you say there's, oh, sorry, this is Debbie. So you said there's an enforcement team. So what if the investigation finds there is discrimination? What avenue is there for the complainants to find some kind of resolution to the complaint? Like what options do they have?
Yes. So through our enforcement team, we work with individuals. First, we try mediation, whether that's connecting them to a landlord-tenant mediator or engaging in that mediation ourselves. We provide advocacy through the forms of reasonable accommodations, reasonable modifications, and then we can also pass those cases along to our contacts at legal aid, the eviction defense, and we can also do a warm handoff to bully or HUD, depending on the case. So we help manage that transition. Thank you.
This is Kathy. I'm Gretchen and Debbie. I'm wondering if it would be helpful if you could share your experiences at the meetings you've been to, like what some of the questions are that you've been receiving.
This is Debbie. I think, so one of the questions I remember was just what does a process look like? So you get a complaint. And that one was a little difficult because I said, well, we haven't really had one yet. So I know that the intake would come in and then they would start with down the process of, is this something that we can handle? Do we need to pass it off to maybe bully, or is it within our jurisdiction? And then it would go down. And then the other question was, how long does something like this take? So once we get a complaint, I said, well, government does take some time. So there's a process. But I said, again, it's a little hard to say how long because it is a little, it would depend, and we haven't had one yet. So those are I think the two biggest questions I had.
I remember a young person say, so it wouldn't be okay to not be able to get, this is Gretchen, I'm sorry, Glenna.
That's fine, you said it.
Would it, they shared stories of people who apply for jobs and then perceive the employer to say, well, you're great, you're our best candidate, but I'm not comfortable because you're unhoused. Does that mean that we'd be interested in those kinds of conversations? I remember getting that question. And kind of similarly phrased questions for other situations, like what if somebody tries to be shopping and they're asked to leave? what if somebody is trying to apply for an apartment and is denied and the person says something about their housing status? It's really just sort of trying on those questions is really largely the questions that I received.
Question. This is JJ speaking. Yeah. I did request of a landlord an accommodation for a strobe light. And it's electronic, and I wouldn't mind paying for the electronic part, but I wanted the landlord to pay for the installment. And then what would happen if it died? Would I call, like if the strobe doesn't work? And then there's a long delay in getting it replaced. Would I need to replace it myself, or because it's small? I really think it's the landlord's responsibility, but that's my question. Who would be responsible for something like that?
Yeah. This is Marley speaking. When it comes to reasonable modifications, changes to the unit, in any way, that is the responsibility of the tenant to pay for, unless that landlord or property manager is receiving federal funding. So if the property manager or landlord is receiving federal funding, they are responsible for the modification. However, they cannot stop you from installing the modification if you have the means to and request it.
I see. This is JJ. I see.
So would it be helpful to talk through a couple of those examples? Would anyone want to play with scenarios? Marley, from your experience, do you have a scenario you'd like to put on the table?
Yeah, I was curious, when it comes to, oh, this is Marley, by the way. I'm curious to talk through the implications of housing status as a protected class, especially when it comes to folks who are using, who maybe don't have rental history, maybe they don't have credit history. And they're like, well, I've been unhoused and now I'm seeking housing. And that being a reason of denial from the landlord or property manager. Because they don't have that. I'm also curious talking through the implications of someone denying someone based off of how they look, or steering individuals to certain areas of town or certain apartment complexes based off of their perceived housing or housing status. And maybe the sorts of reasons that people who are unhoused hear as denials. So I'm curious about hearing, like, what are the reasons that they've heard word for word from property managers or landlords as reasons that they've been denied, and does that fall under the protected class of housing status or not?
This is Gretchen. I think the short answer is we're going to have to test a few to learn.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a new area of enforcement on that end. And for example, we know that it continues to be true that people would be able to create reasonable rules, background pieces, guest expectations at different spaces. But I don't know. I don't think we do know, would past rental history, we don't know how that would interface. I mean, because it's a fair question. On the one hand, you can imagine the landlord would want to see past ability of payment. And one of the things we explored is, well, would other forms of credit, would we want to be able to allow a person to bring in other types of credit, but maybe having some form of demonstrating a person's been able to make a regular payment be a legitimate thing, but you could maybe substitute other forms of that for housing status. We don't know. We thought we might need to get one and start playing with it and looking at the circumstances.
Yeah.
Like Lieutenant Aguilar said, we imagine beginning, and like you mentioned with your process, Marley, we imagine beginning with kind of mediation or facilitation, you know, seeing, well, this person could demonstrate ability to pay in these ways, like they maybe receive some social security or have this source of income. And source of income, you can't discriminate against either. So would that meet the landlord's needs to see that it's a reasonable bet? You know, as opposed to narrowly rental history. It's a question that we've played with, but we don't really know the answer.
Absolutely. This is Marley. What comes to mind is under fair housing, we often use letters of explanation when it comes to individuals with criminal history. I'm wondering if letters of explanation could be something that carries over to advocates working with folks who have they haven't had housing status in the past, as a way to advocate for, you'll see this lacking on my application. Here's a little bit of explanation. Please still consider me. And also another barrier that my team and I talked about today when it comes to rental across the state of Oregon is that landlords can change the deposit based off of their perceived risk of renting to that individual. And sometimes these deposits are astronomical, they're huge, but it's legal. And this is a way that folks can assess risk when it comes to certain individuals. But if it's connected to protected class specifically, or a snap judgment or an assessment of that person's identity, that could be an issue of discrimination beyond just the fact that maybe they don't have rental history or credit history. But if they're making a judgment of, oh, this person has a history or an identity that I feel is dangerous to rent to, that would be a case of discrimination. Yeah.
This is Gretchen. I slightly just lost my train of thought, but building on that, I'm thinking we're interested to explore that same piece of snap judgment. Like, can we present an alternative explanation, a story, a reference, a explanation as to why this isn't here and what this is? And like you said, if there's something in the background that would justify the increase in the deposit that's distinct from just simply being without housing.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know what, I did not pay the following 5 creditors.
Yeah.
That might be a valid thing, but I've been living with my housing has been unstable and I've been unhoused for the last 6 months.
Yes.
Those are 2 different things, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at it kind of in a context of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine, like our current complaint process, we would begin with hearing the kind of the facts and the circumstances and then talking with the person. So in this case, the landlord, this is what we're hearing. You know, in Salem, we don't want to see discrimination based on housing status. You know, we're seeing this and this and this, trying to help the person come to an understanding of the objective of the code and maybe an alternative way to understand the risk. And we hope, you know, through conversation that would work. But if there seems to be that, like you said, that snap judgment purely based on housing status, that would be when we talk with our city attorney and discuss the process of beginning to move in the city's municipal court. But it would depend, like you said, if, you know, if there's some not valid, what's the word? If there's something in the past that's germane to the criteria that isn't related to housing status, well, that's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
I worked with a person who was excluded from a place of public accommodation once, and they were concerned it was due to the color of their skin. When I looked into it, there was verified evidence of the person having shoplifted. And the store demonstrated that they had the person leave because of their shoplifting and were able to prove that. So that's different. Yeah, basically just it's kind of same concept, but just a simple example to help illustrate.
I do have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
This is Tamati, by the way. So my question is, I actually have a friend who's tried to get an apartment. He's been in the same place for 18 years and now he has to move.
Okay.
Living with family, now he's going somewhere else. So as he went to get a place, I think his deposit was like, I want to say it was like 1,800. And then after he contacted and they did their back or whatever. They told him 2,600. So should I have him investigate that further and see if he could get any information as to why the huge price increase and then go forward, or?
Yeah, I would recommend, I mean, it's worth asking questions around and asking if the property manager has some sort of reason that they're willing to share with them. Because even if he's moving forward and decides he doesn't want to rent with this property manager, it would be helpful to know, is there a reason that you denied me? If he asks, is there a reason that I've been denied, or if there's a reason why for this increase in deposit, the landlord should be able to provide an explanation. Yeah. And then also, this is Marley again, if he feels as though discrimination is happening, please contact us.
Sure. If he talks to me, I will speak.
Thank you.
What other situations or questions? I think Linnell.
Go ahead, Luna.
If it's appropriate to add a couple of examples, it's common for us to have, we shelter ladies who sometimes have evictions on their records. And I know that can be a valid concern for any landlord. Yet sometimes the reasons are really heartbreaking. We've had women who have moved in with a parent who's dying and they're doing caregiving until the parent dies, but they're not on the lease. But when the parent dies, they have nowhere to go. So, you know, technically they should leave. But then I don't know if they end up with a formal eviction since they weren't on the lease, but they end up with like a bad mark because they stayed after the parent died because they had nowhere to go. We've had kids who are living with a parent and maybe the child is an adult and has schizophrenia and the parent unexpectedly dies and the kid has already been living there, but they weren't on the lease, or they were, but now they can't afford the rent. We've had women who experience domestic violence and maybe the husband actually leaves at some point and maybe they were even both on the lease, but now he's gone, and if they both work, she's living with less income and can't afford the rent and gets evicted. So those are some of the situations that we see. And if letters of explanation can be used for criminal history, I would hope that that same type of process could be applied for kind of sharing some of those situations. So it's not like this person was just living in a place and just choosing not to pay rent endlessly. There were some extenuating circumstances that life just kind of dealt them some hardship and now they've got nowhere to go. And if letters of explanation can become a thing in a broader way, I think that would be really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Marley speaking. All of those stories are not the first time that I've heard those situations. They happen so often. I know under HUD, letters of explanation, landlords and property managers should consider them, but they don't have to accept them. That's the difference between letters of explanation and reasonable accommodations, in which property managers have to accept a reasonable accommodation if there is verification of a disability and that it's necessary for that individual to receive housing. So reasonable accommodations are specific to disability, and I would add that addiction and substance use, a history of that is considered a disability under the Fair Housing Act. So an individual who had experienced addiction or substance use in the past, and that influenced their credit history or their rental history in some way, they can request a reasonable accommodation to have that overlooked in their application, and because it's related to their history of addiction. If they're currently users or currently using or they currently have an addiction, reasonable accommodations and the protected class of disability does not protect them. But if that's a part of their history, they can absolutely use those. I would love to see letters of explanation used in more broad sense. And I would add that there are specific protections for victims of domestic violence. We have a guide, which I will try to get to you, Linnell, that have more details about victims of domestic violence and their housing rights and ways that they can get out of leases or remove an abuser off of their lease to stay in their housing. And I don't know if you've seen that before or utilized it. Great, I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marley, if I may, this is Gretchen.
Mhm.
I had a question. I know you mentioned your enforcement arm works with the federal protected classes
Federal and state.
in the state, so not city.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How do you imagine interacting if you, and I think this goes back to your initial question. I think and I don't want to speak for all of us, but I think we'd like to know if you do come across the situation that relates to our local code. We'd love the referral.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because even if we can't secure a remedy, we still find the information intrinsically valuable because we can understand the trends. We can try to express support and denounce the situation. We can try informally, and maybe there'll be circumstances where we can take it to our municipal court. So
Yeah.
we'd love the referrals. And imagine it could be a good partnership sometimes because you'll have information on things that we're not as versed in.
Absolutely. This is Marley speaking. That referral process will be really key. And that's partly why I'm here, so that I can learn more examples if we've had any cases so far, or what people have heard in the community, so that I can give that to our enforcement team for them to be able to be filtering through their intakes, and then know when to pass it along to the city. And yeah, so that'll be a really important partnership. Absolutely. Yeah.
Gretchen, we welcome Joaquin. Thank you for joining us. If you want to say hi.
Hi, this is Joaquin. Sorry for being late. Happy to be. I'm sorry, I did miss the name of your guest.
Oh, yes. My name is Marley Baker. I'm with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. I'm the Education Outreach Specialist for the Portland Metro and City of Salem.
I'm sorry, Marley, this is the interpreter. I just had my
Oh.
brain broke down. Just say where you're from again. Sorry.
Yes. The Fair Housing Council of Oregon.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, this is Angelo. Any more questions regarding this topic? I know it's kind of hard to answer, a lot of these questions because we just implemented this into our code. So we don't have any like examples or anything. So yeah, any questions?
No. This is Marley. No question, but we did post on our Instagram a new post about housing status being added as a protected class in Salem. And I've been sharing that at community meetings I've been and trying to get the word out. So if I learn of any situations or circumstances, I'll be sure to connect them to you, and hopefully we can continue creating more concrete examples to share with folks to know where to go and when to go to experience discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Are you familiar with any statewide effort to change state statute to include houselessness as a protected class?
And let me pause right there. That was Joaquin who asked the question.
Thank you.
This is Marley responding. Unfortunately, no. In fact, as far as I'm aware, City of Salem is the first city in Oregon to implement housing status as a protected class, which is why I think it's so important to really have concrete, this is just like such a great policy to implement and to use as an example to other cities, to bring to legislation, because I mean, it's like absolutely necessary. I mean, housing status and homelessness and mental health and DV, it all kind of comes together. And so this is kind of the missing piece, I would say. Housing status and criminal history, I would love to see become protected classes at both the state and federal level. As far as I'm aware, I haven't heard of any movement to bring that to legislation at either of those levels. But at the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, we do engage in some policy work in working with
some of those people at the top who can bring those to legislation and can draft those policies. So I'm really excited to see how this develops and what it ends up being like as a way to possibly bring to other cities and groups. But yeah, so far there hasn't been.
This is Kathy. I mean, thank you for being here. And I think as we get more experience with how it plays out, I think we'll have some important conversations coming up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I'd like to think as the pilot program to see how it works, and then hopefully we see that as it's a success. We can do this, and then hopefully we can push it to state. So I think it's a good thing that we're doing this and we're starting to do this. And yeah, thank you for being here. Any more questions before we move on tonight? Well, all right, I think we can move on to our bias crime update. Dan Aguilar.
Hi, this is Debbie. We had one bias incident this last month, and it occurred on November 28th in South Salem. And it was reported as graffiti found in a bathroom in a public area that had a hate symbol on it. Specifically, it was a swastika. The city was able to paint over that graffiti after it was reported and a police report taken. However, there are no suspects. So at this time, the case is closed pending suspect identification. I do have a little bit of follow-up on a case we covered here back in June. And if you'll remember, this case involved an individual living in an apartment who was experiencing harassment, repeated harassment by the children of another tenant. They were adult children of another tenant. And the harassment never rose to the level of a crime, but the victim continued to report the harassment. And ultimately in June, that harassment turned into an assault, as well as a bias crime because of some language that was used and what we believe the intent of the assault was, or the motivation of the assault. The two individuals were later arrested by the police department and ultimately just recently both pled guilty. They were originally charged with an assault and a bias crime. And then they pled guilty, and I believe they pled guilty to, I believe it was maybe one count of bias crime, and it was potentially pled guilty to an assault charge as well. I don't have the results of one of the sentencing. However, one of the individuals was sentenced to 36 months probation, some anger management, has to receive some substance abuse treatment. And unfortunately, I don't have the sentencing for the other individual, but I did wanted to follow up on that because we had discussed that at one of our previous meetings. And that's all I have.
All right, so Angela, thank you, Lieutenant. Any questions on those?
Yeah, this is Joaquin. You may not know, likely don't, but
I have a question.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, about the graffiti, that problem with the swastika and everything in the area. I'm wondering, can we change that? How can we change that situation, the graffiti?
This is Debbie. So that's a great question. Unfortunately, graffiti is very difficult because it often happens at night in locations where there aren't many people, so there aren't many witnesses. We do have a graffiti abatement team, and their whole job is to respond when we receive reports of graffiti and try to remove it as soon as possible. Because obviously the longer the graffiti remains in place, the more likely that more graffiti takes place, the less likely it is that people feel like that area is taken care of. There are some substances that we have investigated. So there are some surfaces that are semi-resistant to paint, like spray paint, to help try to prevent that graffiti in the first place. So those are always possibilities. And then holding people accountable when we do find or identify who is applying their graffiti. We don't often have a lot of success because, again, they're difficult to investigate. But I think that trying to take care of graffiti as soon as we see it, trying to prevent it if we can by those substances, those surfaces, and then holding people accountable really are what we have right now, plus education, which we don't have a lot of anti-graffiti education with children, but that is another potential solution as well.
Okay. This is JJ. So that concern is related to gang activity and gang bias. You talked about the swastika, and I'm thinking about gangs and the gang tagging that goes on all over. It's not right.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that our approach, obviously our approach with whether it's bias crime or gangs is similar in some respects. Obviously with the bias crime, the concern is much deeper than just it's a particular gang sign that's being applied to somewhere. But our approach, at least as far as the graffiti itself, is somewhat similar in that it's identifying it, removing it as fast as we can, trying to prevent it, and then holding people accountable. But you are correct, we do see graffiti that isn't bias related, but is more related to individuals trying to mark territories. And that is a whole nother set of issues as far as who's applying that, why are they applying it, how can we get them to stop, whether it's taking back our neighborhood. So we have
right.
So we have groups that are trying to take back their neighborhoods, so holding events in parks because we're not going to allow certain groups to take over those parks. And so communities have recognized that that's what we need to do. Instead of staying away from areas, we need to make those areas family friendly. We need to attend events in those areas and take those areas back into our community. So that, as far as that, the gang element is concerned, that I think is very successful when communities take that ownership.
Yes.
And so I think we might have Joaquin and then Kelsey. Are you tracking that too?
Yeah.
Great.
Joaquin, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. This is Joaquin. My question was something. And related to something that you said. Thank you for the update about the case in June. If I remember correctly, the victim was severely injured and required surgery.
Yes.
How are they doing? Or do you know?
So I have not had, this is Debbie. I have not had contact with that individual actually since we made the arrest. I know that they did have surgery and that the injury was repaired. I don't know if they have any ongoing lingering disabilities or injuries from that. So I wish I could tell you, but I don't know specifically how they're doing.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
This is Kelsey. I think going back to the question about what we can do about the situation, I do want to kind of steer the conversation away from graffiti being the problem and more of the blatant anti-Semitism that comes with displaying a swastika. As I'm sure everyone knows, there's a dramatic increase in anti-Semitism recently in the last couple of years. And then I also want us to really be sure when we're talking about graffiti and kind of taking back neighborhoods that we're not talking about that's a lot of like coded white supremacy words and phrases. So I do want to kind of acknowledge that and make sure that we're steering away from that language.
This is Joaquin. I have a question for the lieutenant. I know you said that arrests are really made, perpetrators are really identified. But when they are, who are they often? Because I would imagine in school places or parks are probably young people, we might guess. So in your experience, are these, what motivates these kids? I would imagine at some level, I'm sure it's kind of just rowdiness and trying to do something that they think is, you know, risky and provocative. And I'm sure some of it might reflect values that they have, but you know, what's your understanding of what the motivations are?
Yeah, this is Debbie. You're right. A lot of times it's just younger juveniles who are just making bad choices. Because a lot of times the graffiti are genitalia or bad words or things like that, where they're just being kids and they're not making good decisions. Really, a lot of that is what we see. Obviously, the point that Kelsey made is that the hate crime is, or the hate graffiti is something different. And then you do see some marks that are, you know, people trying to, maybe they belong to a particular group that they're trying to mark a fence. So we do see some of that, but honestly, the most that I see, and this is just anecdotally, is they take Sharpies or spray paint and they just are not making good decisions and they mark up a wall or whatnot.
Yeah. This is Joaquin again. Thank you. So when we're trying to forecast ahead and look at ways in which we can, we've had this conversation a couple of times over my time here. I don't know. And maybe it's me just invariably saying the same thing, but we kind of always bring it back to education. I mean, these are often school places and places where children are. I mean, and I know we've been for a long time trying to strengthen our ties to Salem Kaiser Public Schools and other institutions of learning. And I think maybe that's something we could, in terms of mitigating these things moving forward, might be something we pay more attention to, because obviously responses to symbols of hate is a community investment and you know, welcoming, making the community more welcoming, and that starts at home, but it also is in the school. It's a community moment, and so maybe looking forward, we can invest more energy in that partnership. That might happen. I don't know.
Yeah, this is Debbie, and there's a lot of great organizations that are keeping kids busy. So Boys and Girls Club, you know, giving them something to do after school is a great thing to do. You know, put them in sports or after school activities or whatever to keep them from making those bad choices. Yeah.
Oh, this is somebody, I just have one further thing to add. If we see things happening, people out in the community and things, please try not to be confrontational. I don't want anyone getting hurt trying to intervene, I mean, I'm all for community meetings and everybody getting together and those type of things. I don't want someone running off getting really done in because they're trying to step up. So I would say just please report it to your police department or the appropriate people.
Angela here, great conversations. Any more questions, comments? All right, hearing none, I think we move on to our complaints / concerns of discrimination. And Gretchen.
This is Gretchen. I had just one, and it related to a person trying to conduct business in a place of public accommodation and being asked to leave and being concerned that that reason for the ask to leave related to their identity. In this case, the entity had a diversity, equity, and inclusion office that very much wanted to hear and receive and look into that report. And so I began, after hearing and sitting with the person for a bit, I connected those people together and they've been working together. So I don't have any further updates, but I had the one report.
All right, Angela here. Thank you, Gretchen. Election of officers. We can't really do that tonight because we do not have quorum, right? That's correct, Gretchen, right? Even
That's
if
correct.
we don't have
6 out of 7 needed. Thanks for being here though.
Yeah, so I guess I'll be staying in the commission for one more month. So we'll do our election of officers next month for January. But I know Hamadi, you're interested in chair and Kelsey was interested in vice chair. Is that still correct?
Definitely.
Okay, any other people?
Who, I'm sorry, Angela, this is the interpreter. Who was interested in vice chair?
Kelsey.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other people that are interested in those positions? All right. So yeah, I mean, I'm assuming next month will just be a formality because I feel like we have our officers here now at this point. So yeah, we'll do those next month then.
And hopefully we have a quorum. This is Kathy, but
Yeah, because if not, we're gonna have to keep pushing our elections. I also think about our task forces because those might also need new chairs and vice chairs too. All right, we can move on to our task forces and project updates, and that is awareness. Kathy.
that's me. This is Kathy. So we haven't had a task force meeting since September, I don't think. Because people have been busy and things have come up. So we're going to meet 2 weeks from tonight, December 21st, and hopefully talk about who's going to be chair of the task force starting in January, because I'm gonna step down from that role. And then we have Professor Bradshaw coming. She's the professor who worked with us on the discrimination survey, and we had some questions about how we can make it better for next time. And she, I believe, will be at our January meeting to talk about that. So that's our big thing. And maybe something for the commission to talk about after the new year is whether the commission should take on some of the projects that the task force has been doing, because I think we have a lot on our plate that is too much for one group to do. So that would be something to maybe talk about in the new year.
All right, this is Angela. Thank you, Kathy. I also forgot to mention, you also, as a commission, you also need to decide if you want to continue these task forces. That's up to the commission as well, because you don't necessarily need to continue, awareness or LGBTQA intersectional rights task force. So that's also for the commission to decide if they want to keep those task forces, if they want to add another task force. So that's something to be aware of. And any questions for Kathy?
I didn't have a question. This is Marty with a question. Will you make sure to maybe Gretchen can assist you and just get an invite out, or at least a reminder to the meeting. The one that's coming up, so,
For our December meeting? Sure.
or whichever one you said is coming in the next weeks.
The December 21st is the task force's next meeting. And then at our January meeting, as of right now, is Professor, I can't say that. Professor Bradshaw is calendar to come to that January meeting, assuming that we're still planning on going ahead with that. So, yeah. Gretchen.
I've got it.
Hold on for the interpreter, just I'm catching up. The interpreter's catching up. Give me a second.
Okay.
The point is, Hamadi asked. Okay, thank you. I caught up.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, this is Laura. So this, and maybe this is just being really super obvious, but can we, Gretchen, when you send the you know, the minutes and everything and the agenda out for the next meeting, could you just be like really obvious about we need quorum so that we can elect our chair and vice chair? And maybe that'll motivate folks to come.
Thank you. This is Gretchen. I'd be happy to, Laura. Thanks for that idea.
This is Angela. Thank you, Laura. Any more questions? All right, if not, moving on to our LGBTQIA+ intersectional rights task force. Kelsey.
So we had Trans Day of Remembrance last month. And I want to say thank you so much to those of you who helped. So Gretchen, Kathy, Angelo. Sorry, my cat is being very rude right now. Let's see. Angelo, ex-commission members, Mike, and Tricarico, Snarfy, and Michael Winterfeld. So thank you all so much. I was out of state for the event, so they took on a lot of responsibility. So thank you all so much. But we have our meeting next week on Wednesday at 6 p.m. We are looking for members. So if you do not have a task force, we would love your membership. And then going back to what Angelo said, if we are, as a commission, are wanting maybe to absorb what the task force does, that's part of a discussion that we can have. But other than that, I think that's our update.
This is Kathy. I have to correct myself. The next meeting of the Awareness Task Force is next Wednesday. I was thinking it was 2 Wednesdays from now, but that's, we rescheduled it because of the holidays. And I think the LGBTQIA+, I don't know about Amelia, but I think right now it's technically a task force of 3, and I haven't seen Amelia in a few meetings, and I'm stepping off of that one, so it'll be a task force of 1 starting in January. So Kelsey really does need help.
And somebody, I have a question. Does it have to be just commissioners, or is some of our guests, are they welcome to join or attempt to join?
Yeah, so anyone is welcome to join. Don't have to be a commissioner. Our previous chair stepped down from the commission and was just chairing the task force for a bit. So we welcome anyone, commissioners, guests, anyone interested in supporting the LGBTQIA task force.
Yeah, this is Angelo. Yeah, that's a good point to know as well. To be a member of the task force, you don't need to be a member of the commission. I know for some people, they want to, do the work, but they don't have time for the full, commission meetings. So this is a great way to still, be involved. So yeah, if you know anybody that wants to join just the task forces, please go ahead and encourage them. What do they need to do? I don't know what they need to do to join the task forces themselves.
Thank you. This is Gretchen. Anyone can attend meetings as a guest. To formally join the commission chair, if my memory serves me, needs to appoint the individual. And that's an informal process, but you express interest after attending a meeting, and then we ask the chair for that appointment. So we have a process to be formally on the group.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, so it's really easy, honestly. Like, if you as a task force thinks this individual would be a good choice, I'll probably, or whoever the chair is, will probably appoint them. So yeah, it's a very informal process. And I know, Zeke, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just interested in getting some more information about that, possibly joining. So, I could send you my email, Kelsey, over chat if that'd be useful, or.
Real quick, this is Gretchen. We have chat disabled because it isn't visible on our public meeting YouTube channel. But Zeke, with your permission, I can send your email to Kelsey.
Sorry. Yes, actually, that'd be great. Then I just noticed there wasn't a chat. Yes,
Thanks.
that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Will do. Yep.
All right, thank you, Zeke. Laura, you had a question?
Yeah, just logistics, I guess. So how do we join the meeting? Is it just like, for this meeting, we get the Zoom link sent to us. So for the task force meeting, how would I get on there?
This is Gretchen. I'd be happy to add you to any that you're interested in. It works just like that. And so far, the task forces are remote. They could have the decision to come back in person or remain remote. Right now, for the December 21st meetings next week, I have Zoom links. And I'd be happy to send them to you if you like.
I would like that. Yes, please.
This is Kathy. I wonder if maybe you should just go to all the commission members.
Will
If they
do.
want to join, they can.
Yep.
Yeah,
Will do.
this is. Yeah,
Yeah, this is Angela. Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why a lot of commissioners don't join those meetings is that they don't know how to, because you guys don't get the link for those. So Gretchen, I'm wondering if for like the new year, you can send a separate email saying like, hey, we have these task forces. If you're interested, please let me know. Just kind of putting awareness out there and be like, hey, we have these.
Happy to do that. This is Gretchen. Happy to do that.
So, and also really advertising that anybody can join those task forces if you as a commission choose to continue having those. Any further questions? All right, hearing none. Gretchen, if you can do staff updates and community calendar.
I can. This is Gretchen. I've got 2 staff updates, and one is I wanted to let folks know that the city is hosting a resource fair in Spanish, and it is coming up on February 7th. And the folks coordinating that asked if the Human Rights Commission would be interested in doing a table, and if anyone is a Spanish speaker and would be interested in tabling, that would be lovely, so that there's a direct conversation. So I wanted to just share that. It's February 7th from 5 to 7 p.m. I'll also send an email, but if you're interested and you're available, please let me know. And those of you in the room, I've got a printed flyer that I'll also pass around. But I have a link I can send as well for everybody.
thank you.
And then my second topic is I did just want to acknowledge that we thought this was going to be Angelo's last meeting. I felt excited to meet Angelo when you were a junior in high school and quickly rose to a leadership position. And it's really been my honor and pleasure to get to work with you these years. And so I wanted to formally give Angelo the proclamation that he accepted from the mayor for Human Rights Day at a recent city council meeting. So I wanted to give that to you in person, and it has the mayor's signature and the official seal. And just thank you for the opportunity to get to work with you all these years.
Thank you. I had some words prepared, but I'm not gonna say them because it's not my phone. It's not my phone meeting. So, but yeah, thank you, Gretchen. Yeah, I accepted this at the recent council meeting, and it was really an honor to do so. Because Gretchen, the mayor hasn't made a proclamation like this while I was in the commission, right? I feel like this is the first time a mayor has done this. Is that correct? Or they
No.
just haven't involved the Human Rights Commission?
Maybe, well, the Human Rights Commission, maybe that's been it. Can you remember?
I don't think they have.
Yeah, I don't think they have.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't think they have with HRC.
Thank you. Yeah, because you're right. I'm not remembering it either. So I feel like I've seen the proclamation before, but that might be some years ago with a former group. There's been other private groups that relate to human rights, and that's starting to flow into my memory. But this is fitting and logical that we are the connection to that proclamation. So I'm glad Mayor Hoy made that happen.
So you're coming back next month for one more meeting?
Yeah, and
It's nice of you. You don't have to.
yeah, and any other meeting that we need to have. Yeah, I'm committed to being chair until we elect a new chair. So please have quorum next month. But if not, again, I'll return until we have a new chair.
Watch out. They might stall.
Gretchen, how about the community calendar? Do we have anything for the community?
This is Gretchen Hope, Commissioner Hope Strayer, who I guess couldn't be with us tonight, did prepare the December calendar and give us a couple of additions. So wanted to make sure you saw those in your email. And other than that, and we'll add this resource fair. Other than that, I don't have anything to share. I feel really grateful to Hope for doing that every month.
Okay. Member remarks and their announcements for tonight. Any? I feel like we never have any. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna use this time to thank the commission, but I'll wait for the January. Kelsey, you had something?
Yes, just remembered. I volunteer for the Center for Hope and Safety. Oh, this is Kelsey. Hello. I volunteer for the Center for Hope and Safety, where works with survivors of domestic and sexual assault. They're starting their winter advocate training. So if you or someone you know is passionate about supporting survivors, contact Center for Hope and Safety. It is always just such a great place to volunteer for. So spread the word.
Yeah, thank you, Kelsey. Any more announcements? Yeah, remarks, announcements. And then Gretchen, actually, for the new commission, I forget, have the previous years, have we done, I know we've had a separate meeting to kind of restructure things. I'm blanking on the word, but retreat. We've had a retreat. Have we had separate meetings for those, or have they been in the General Human Rights Commission? I don't remember.
This is Gretchen. Great question, because we've done both.
Yeah.
We've scheduled separate meetings. We've tacked strategic planning onto a typical meeting time, but expanded the length of time we gathered. And we've also taken pieces of planning at multiple meetings. So the commission's done that in many ways, and it would be up to the group to decide how to structure that in the future. Sometimes you've kind of brought food to share, sometimes, you know, it really is up to you.
Yeah, and I've only been part of a retreat, one retreat in person, because of, you know, the pandemic. So that's for up to the group to decide. And Krista, you had a question?
Yeah, this is Krista here. I had an idea about the retreat. It's gonna be in February, and I thought maybe we should have it during our regular, have it in February during our regular meeting so that the new chair and vice chair could be running that retreat.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That would be up to the new chair and vice chair. But I do think that would be a great idea for him to, start that retreat as, to lead the meeting. So I think it would be a great idea for him. Yeah, and just at the retreat, you would kind of share your ideas for the year. You would decide the task forces, if you want to keep them, if you want to kind of absorb into the general Human Rights Commission. So you would make those decisions at the retreat. But yeah, that is up to the new commission to decide how you wanted to do that for next year.
Okay.
Yeah, any other things? All right, if not, I guess I'll see you in January for our next meeting. When is that, Gretchen? Do you remember?
I don't, but
Because it's no longer on the.
it's not?
No.
That's an error, or maybe it is just no longer, the new format.
The new format's not on there anymore.
I don't like that. Give me a sec. January 11th, Tuesday, January 11th.
Wednesday?
Oh, sorry, Wednesday, January 11th. We used to be on Tuesday, so I think my brain goes there still. Wednesday, January 11th from 6 to 8. And did this work okay? The hybrid experience? Do we continue? Copy? All right.
Yeah. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.